It's the small things that have really plagued the Atlanta Braves all year long, and that showed up again in Monday night's loss to the Dodgers. We'll talk about that. Also, the Braves' offensive struggles with runners in scoring position comes to a just historic level, and we'll set you up for the week ahead where the Braves have to take advantage of the schedule this week. We'll discuss all that on today's episode of Locked On Braves, so let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I'm your host, Jake Mastriani. You can follow me on social media at ShortstopBall. Check out the podcast at LockedOn_Braves. Subscribe on YouTube if you're new. Please hit that thumbs up button. Just go ahead and do it right now. It'll help us out a ton. If you're listening on the audio version, make sure you leave me a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And thank you so much for your support here at Locked On Braves. Whether you're an everyday or make us your first listen of the day, it means a lot. And thank you for continuing to let me know that down in the comments section below. Got a lot to get into on today's episode. We'll obviously discuss the 9-0 loss on Monday to the Dodgers. There's some key elements in that game, particularly early on when the game was still close, where you just continue to see the Braves fail in those little things. And it's not just on the offensive side. There's a couple of things defensively as well that the Braves missed out on that's cost them in that game in particular, but really all year long. So we'll talk about that, but we will get into the struggles with the offense, especially with runners in scoring position, and look at the schedule ahead. Look, as bad as this season has been, and the Braves are currently out of a postseason spot, they have everything in front of them to get into the postseason. But they got to do it. They have to take care of business. And that's not something we've seen them do on a consistent basis this year. But we'll discuss all that on today's episode. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So the Atlanta Braves end up with a split of the Los Angeles Dodgers at home over the weekend with the wraparound game on a Monday, a 9-0 loss on Monday. And obviously the last two games of that series leave you with a very bitter, sour taste in your mouth, whatever you want to call it. Like I said it last week going into that series, I felt like the best you could hope for with a series split with the way the Braves had played early in the week offensively against the Reds, getting shut out against them, that final game against the Nationals. It just to me felt like getting a split against the Dodgers with that offense was going to be a win for the Braves. But certainly with the way things played out, it feels pretty bad to come away with only a series split after winning the first two games and honestly winning them the way that you did pretty handedly. I know Friday's game was a little bit closer. Saturday's obviously was a blowout. As Sunday's was really close, obviously, until the last inning there. And look, these last two games for the Dodgers ended up being blowouts, but I think you could say that for the most part, the majority of those games, it was pretty close. And these were, close matchups. And again, you would have told me coming in the Braves are going to get a split. I feel like I could live with that. But it feels like there's an opportunity missed there. It's another third time that's happened in the last couple of months. You remember that Diamondback series before the All-Star break? They go out on the road. They win the first two games of that series. Feel like you're going to be able to get a big 4-game series win against a good opponent. And then you drop the last two. And then there's that Marlins series where looked like the Braves were on a roll. Finally showing some consistency on offense. They win the first two games of a 4-game set with the Marlins, and then they got dominated in the final two games of that series and ended with a split against the Marlins. It's just when you split a 4-game series, it sometimes depends on which games you win, on how you feel coming out of it. You can look at that Met series too in New York where the Braves lose the first two games of that series, lost one in brutal fashion, and then they come back and win the last two games of that series. You're feeling pretty great coming out of it. So again, it all just kind of depends on what games, I guess, you win in a 4-game series is how you feel coming out of it. But certainly things started out great, but ended very poorly for the Braves in that series. I want to start with the pitching side of things. Max Fried, 6 innings, just 2 hits allowed. He had a no-hitter going through 4 innings, 3 walks, 3 earned runs, 7 strikeouts. Not a lot of whiffs, but a ton of weak contact. Only 4 hard hits allowed by Max Fried all night. And that's what you expect. When Max Fried is on and he's pitching well, that's what you expect. Could do without some of the walks, and that obviously cost him early on in this one. But 2 hits allowed through 6 innings against that Dodgers lineup is good. The fact they still got 3 earned runs just tells you Dodgers offense took advantage of the few opportunities they had against Max Fried. But I thought this was a good outing for him, certainly, again, when you consider the opponent. And again, we're going to talk about the offense a lot, but I want to talk for a second how that could be impacting the pitching. If you're Max Fried and you're pitching in this game and you got a no-hitter going through 4 innings, your offense has had runners all over the place through the first 4 innings, and you are losing 1-0. That has to be a little bit demoralizing. And look, Max Fried is a professional. He is a competitor of all competitors. And you know he is going to go out there each and every inning and give it his best to try to put a 0 up on the board. But just the human element of it, if it were me, I'd be thinking, what do I have to do? I have to be perfect out here to give this offense a chance. We have had base runners all over the place. I'm throwing a no-hitter, and I'm losing 1-0. It's just, again, I'm sure Max Fried is able to compartmentalize that and just go out and throw his game no matter what. Again, if it were me, I'd be like, what else do I have to do here? I make one little mistake. I have one bad inning, and I'm losing 3-0. And it's just, it has to be a mental part on the pitching side too. When you're seeing this offense continually go out there, have tons of chances, and not be able to capitalize. But overall, a great game for Max Fried. As for the bullpen, this thing certainly got away from them late, and people are going to look at it and see that it's a blowout, but the Braves went to their worst relievers, their bottom 3 relievers to finish off this game, and sometimes that'll happen. Daysbel Hernandez, like we talked about him all year, how I think he has the stuff to be in a big league bullpen, but if you can't control that stuff, and that's been his biggest issue, whether his short stints in the major leagues or at the minor league level, if you can't command it, then it doesn't do him any good. But clearly there's electric stuff there, and until he can figure out how to command that and be able to live in the strike zone a little bit more, he cannot be relied on in close situations. And look, I understand, Snit, you got a full set of games coming up this week that you need to win and want your best guys, available for. So I understand going to Daysbel and some of your bottom relievers here, but certainly that allowed things to get away. And then Aaron Bummer comes in. I know everybody's going to get on Aaron Bummer. That's a tough situation. You're coming in with the bases loaded, facing the top of the Dodgers lineup. He gets the ground ball, not enough for a double play, but Whit Merrifield, goes home. And again, I think that was the right play in that situation. You couldn't give up any more runs, so you had to take a chance. But if you're going to do that, at least play halfway in to give yourself a chance. So again, it's a tough spot just with the way that the ball was hit, but not being able to get an out there leads to a huge inning for the Dodgers right there. But obviously the bullpen really struggled in the last 2 games of that series. Now let's touch on the offense, and then I want to get into some key moments of this game to really dive into, to talk about this Braves team and just some things that they're not doing well, the small part of the game that they're not doing well that's really costing them, not just in Monday's game in particular, but stuff that I've seen happen all year long. But let's discuss the offense first. Over 10 with runners in scoring position through the first 4 innings. We're going to look at some more numbers later with runners in scoring position, so get yourself excited for that. The first inning, you get a leadoff walk, a stolen base. Great, thank you. We're stealing bases. We're trying to put some pressure on the pitcher. You get an error out of that, moves you to third base with 1 out for Ozuna, who lines out on a ball hit 106 miles per hour. Some of that tough batted ball luck for the Braves this year. Olsen walks. Look, Ramon Laureano's been great, but if I'm sitting there in a clutch situation and Matt Olson's at the plate and I see Ramon Laureano on deck, I'm probably going to walk Matt Olson too. Laureano swings at a pitcher's pitch in a 1-0 count. Part of the frustration with this Braves offense, and it's, again, I'm not picking on Laureano, who's been great since coming over in a Braves uniform, but you get into these hitters counts, and then you swing at a pitcher's pitch that is perfectly placed inside, and it's just a lot of that from this offense this year. But you fail to score in the first inning. The second inning, you get a leadoff double. Arcia moves him over to third. Don't know if it's intentional or not, but great job either way. And then Gio Urshela, your most contact-oriented batter in the lineup, guy that doesn't strike out a ton, he strikes out with a runner on third and 1 out. And then Witt comes up and he grounds out. In the third inning, you get a leadoff single. Soler doubles. Michael Harris gets thrown out at home. More on that in a minute. And then Ozuna and Olsen grounds out. So even after you get the Harris single, you get a Soler double, Yeah, Michael gets thrown out at home, but you still got a runner on second with one out for your 3 and 4 hitters in the lineup, and they can't come through. Those guys have to come through in those situations. Those are your two biggest bats left with all the injuries. It is up to Ozuna and Olsen to come through in those situations, and they're just not. In the fourth inning, you get a leadoff triple. And I don't know about you. I guess it's just where I am at this point of the season with this Braves offense. I was listening on the radio at this point, and in the moment he stopped at third base, which obviously he had to, I said, that's the best case scenario for the Dodgers. To get a runner on third base with less than 2 outs is the best case scenario for the Dodgers against this Braves offense. And what happens? Terrible at bat by Sean Murphy. He doesn't get a pitch that's even fully in the strike zone. A couple that maybe clip the zone, and he strikes out. Orlando Arcia falls behind 0-2, battles back 3-2, fouls off a close 3-2 pitch, but then chases one that is well below the zone. And he really didn't get a pitch in his at bat that was fully in the strike zone. That's what I'm talking about in these situations. The Braves just go up there so aggressive, and they're swinging at these borderline pitches instead of waiting for the pitcher to hopefully make a mistake on a pitch that you can clobber, especially early in the count. And it's just all year long with this offense. That just seems to be the approach with runners in scoring position and in these situations. Just go up there aggressively swinging, and I don't know, hope that you make contact and try not to get to 2 strikes because you fear that you're going to strike out. That's the vibe that I get watching these guys. And Murphy and Arcia in particular have been 2 of the worst. And again, we'll point that out in a second. But those 2 guys aren't able to bring him in. And then Gio gets a hanging curveball and hits a soft liner to shortstop to end the inning. So you lost this game in the first 4 innings. Unable to take advantage of scoring opportunities, great scoring opportunities in the first 4 innings, going over 10 with runners in scoring position. We can talk about what happened late, but you lost this game in the first 4 innings when you failed to push across anything to give Max Fried any type of cushion. That's when you lost this game on Monday night. Next, I want to get into some more key moments of this game that are not necessarily just evident of what happened on Monday and that loss, but things that the Braves have just really struggled with all year long. We'll also talk about runners in scoring position. It's going to be a fun episode here on Locked On Braves, but I promise hopefully we'll end things on a high note, but we'll get into more of that here next. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. And unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers, not against anybody else. You're just picking against numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. And you can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. If my math is correct, you can turn $10 into $1,000. And I hope that's correct because that's the material they sent me. One Caleb Williams passing yard gets you 1 win on PrizePicks every week in September. That's right, just 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. That's 4 weeks of free wins. PrizePicks is available in more than 30 states across the country, including Georgia and Alabama. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use code LOCKEDONMLB and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. Thank you for making Locked On Braves your first listen of the day. Go check out Locked On MLB for your second listen, where Sully is getting you ready for the postseason, everything happening around Major League Baseball. You can find that on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team every day. We'll be back, obviously, tomorrow podcast, and we will looking around the league and also set you up for a mailbag episode later this week and recapping everything happening in the Reds series. I want to get into some key moments from Monday's game that, again, it's not just exclusive to Monday's games, but just little things that I saw from both sides. And really, it's early on. Like I said, you lost this game in the first 4 innings, and there's some small moments in those first 4 innings where the Dodgers capitalized, the Braves didn't, and ultimately led to a loss for the Braves. You get the leadoff walk of Miguel Rojas, and it just can't happen. Max Fried can't allow that to happen. You move him. He gets moved over to the second on fielder's choice, close play at second. You give him a free 90 feet because you pay him no attention at second base. That happens all year from Braves pitchers, especially, Max Fried is one of the best, if not the best, at holding runners on at first. but he's pretty bad at holding runners on at second base. And I feel like that's the case for a lot of Braves pitchers. And then you get in a situation where a wild pitch scores a run. Now, a couple of things. Sean Murphy's got to do a better job of smothering that. Look, it's a spiked ball. It's a tough one, but that's why Sean Murphy is back there. That is his value, and it's why I continue to prop him up, because those are spots where you're expecting your Gold Glove catcher to be able to smother that ball and keep it in front. However, that is purely 100% on Miguel Rojas just taking advantage of a situation. First of all, Ohtani's up, so you're probably shifted a little bit at third base. I didn't go back and look, but I would imagine the third baseman is playing well away from the bag, so that allows Rojas to get down the line. But Rojas took off. If you noticed, he took off the moment he saw the ball in the dirt. He didn't even wait to see how far it skipped away. Most runners, and especially if the third baseman is closer to the bag, most runners, they're going to start heading back towards the base the moment the pitch is thrown, or at the very least freeze, because that ball didn't kick away a ton in that spot. I think most of the time that's not a situation you're going to see a player run and go home. But Miguel Rojas was ready. He was at third base ready for that moment. And as soon as he saw it hit the dirt, he took off and scored rather easily. And thankfully, Max Fried didn't get hurt on that play. But it's just one of those little things that the Dodgers did that you just don't see the Braves do. You don't see them on the base pass in those situations preparing for that spot. If this ball is in the dirt, I'm taking off immediately. I'm getting a good lead, knowing the third baseman's not close to the bag. I'm going to take off immediately and score. And that's just a little thing that I noticed with the Dodgers, who have a good offense and are still doing those little things to score. You saw them do more little things later in the game when they got in those run scoring situations and were able to get that sac fly, were able to get that weak ground ball up the middle to score runners. You saw it all throughout with the Dodgers offense in that game, how they were able to do the little things. Now let's talk about Michael Harris getting thrown out at home. First of all, I agree with the send. But again, I just talked about the good base running of Miguel Rojas. If you go back and watch the replay, what does Michael Harris do as he's approaching second base? He pulls up and stops. You have to get a better read. Michael Harris has to read that better. As a center fielder himself, he cannot fall for that little deke that the center fielder gave. You have to be able to get a better read on that and know that that ball is over the center fielder. If he doesn't pull up at second base, he scores easily. Even with him pulling up, though, I still agree with the send, because look, even with your 3 and 4 hitters coming up, as we know, nothing is guaranteed with a runner at third base and no outs. And with the Braves struggles in those situations, I am fine with the send. And it took a perfect throw from Kike Hernandez. Go back and watch that. I know it's painful to do so, but if you just love defense like I do, that was not an easy relay. The throw, he had to reach back for it. He had to spin around, but then he just made an unbelievable throw to home plate to just get Michael Harris. It took that to get Michael Harris at the plate. But again, it goes back to the base running. If Michael Harris gets a better read on that ball, he does not hesitate coming up to second base, he scores easily. So it's just another one of those little things where you don't execute the base running well. The Dodgers execute a relay throw home perfectly, and it costs you a run. And then obviously, look, the first 4 innings were extremely frustrating. But that 4th inning in particular, you get a leadoff triple and you're unable to score. You're already down 1-0. And we've seen this a lot this year too, where the Braves offense has a great run scoring situation. They don't come through. And then what happens the next time the opponent comes to the bat? They put some runs on the board. And that's exactly what you saw in that 4th inning. And just felt like the game was over after that. You had a bunch of chances early on. You did not capitalize. After that 4th inning, you get a leadoff triple. You don't score. Max Fried, like I talked about earlier, if I'm him, I'm a little bit frustrated at that point. And then he comes out and gives up a couple of runs. The Dodgers finally are able to get some hits. Of course, the first hit he gives up is a ball that just lands on the chalk, because that's just the way things are going for the Braves this year. And then the Dodgers put a couple of runs on the board after you fail to score for 4 innings with great opportunities. And that was just the game at that point. So it's just these little things that I see. A couple of base running things in this one. One that you saw the Dodgers do extremely well. One you saw the Braves do not extremely well. And this team is not good enough to not do these little things absolutely perfectly. Look, you can account for injuries, yes, but to not do these little things perfectly or at least most of the time, that's on you. That is on the player. I guess you can put some of it on the manager, but I think most of that is on the player. They're professional athletes. They have to be able to do these things better. They are not a good enough team that is not a juggernaut offense that can overcome some of these deficiencies in doing the small things well. And they just have not executed that all year long. Another thing they have not executed, hitting with runners in scoring position. And you look at the numbers since May 1st, and I think with all Braves offensive stats, you have to start at May 1st, because really you can go back to the last week of April, but I just like a clean start at the beginning of the month. A 230 average with runners in scoring position since that point is 24th in Major League Baseball. A 297 on-base percentage is 28th in Major League Baseball. 25.2% strikeout rate is 4th worst, and a 397 slugging is 21st. Now, you think of the Braves offense, as much as they've struggled scoring runs, they've still slugged the baseball a good bit, especially in the second half. But with runners in scoring position, just a 397 slug, despite having the 5th best hard hit rate of 33.8%. But the Braves have clearly struggled most of the season. Like I said, at least since May 1st, they have been a bottom 5 team in baseball with runners in scoring position. You look at it on an individual level, Jorge Soler has actually been good in these situations, 333 average. Olsen as well is hitting 333 with runners in scoring position. Travis d'Arnaud, 309, although that feels much lower here as of late. It feels like Travis isn't coming up in those spots. And Laureano, since joining the team, a 270 batting average with runners in scoring position. Those have been your best players this year with runners in scoring position. Who have been the worst? It's the 2 guys that came up with a runner on third and 1 out last night. And it's Sean Murphy, who's hitting 188 in those situations, and Orlando Arcia hitting 158. And I know it's probably because as fans, we just focus on the negative a lot of the times, but it feels like Sean Murphy and Orlando Arcia, particularly Arcia, I guess just because he plays every day, are constantly coming up in those spots, and those guys are hitting the worst out of them. Whit Merrifield's actually hitting 901, 091. Whit is hitting 091 in those situations, runners in scoring position. Ozuna is hitting 226 with runners in scoring position. So again, he's been your best hitter all year long, but even he has struggled in those clutch situations. So it's been a tough thing to watch all year long. You look at, again, some of your better hitters this year in those spots are guys that haven't been with you very long, like Soler, like Laureano. And it's guys like Ozuna, like Murphy, Arcia, who have really hurt you in those situations all season long. But hope is not completely gone yet. The Braves have a chance this week if they can take care of business. Haven't really done it well this season. We'll see if they can do it this week. But they have everything in front of them to get to the postseason. And I still believe if this team can get to the postseason, its pitching is good enough. It showed it in that Dodgers series. This starting rotation and your best bullpen arms are still good enough to win in the postseason, but you got to get there. And that really is indicative of what happens this upcoming week. We'll discuss that here next. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. Also, make sure you visit FanDuel.com/playsafe for tools and resources to help you stay in control of the way you play. Again, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. It's been a rough season for the Atlanta Braves. There is no question about that. It has been hard to watch at times. But as we get to the last 2 weeks of the season, Braves still have everything in front of them to get it done on the field. They're 1 game back of the final wild card spot with the Mets winning in extra innings against the Nats. I really thought the Nats were going to help us out on Monday night, but weren't able to hold on to a 1-0 lead late. But despite all that, despite whatever everybody else does, if the Braves take care of their business over the final 2 weeks, they will get into the postseason. It is on them to get it done over these last 2 weeks. and particularly this week. You got 3 games at Cincinnati, 3 games at Miami. Those are teams, below 500 teams that are out of it. And I think I'm done saying at this point that the Braves are just a better team on paper and should be able to beat these teams. This offense is not good enough for us to really say that about anybody. But it is an opportunity against teams that are out of it for the Braves to pick up some wins. And these are series that have, when we look back on this year, if the Braves don't make the postseason, we'll talk a lot about the injuries. And yes, that has played a part in it. But we'll also look at these series against teams below 500 that you could not take advantage of. That really is what would cost the Braves a chance to get into the postseason. It is your final chance. These are your final 6 games against teams below 500. You have to take advantage. I think I'm oversaying what they have to do, but I'm going to say it anyway because I got to fill some time on this podcast. I feel like you need to go 5-1. I feel like one of these series needs to be a sweep. Both of them, at the very least, have to be won. You have to at least go 4-2. You lose either one of these series. Again, you got 3 with the Mets, so you still hold, your fate in your hands, but it makes it a really difficult. Because I think if you go 4-2 over this stretch, you're going to be at least a game back of that final wild card spot. I know the Mets have 4 games coming up against the Phillies, but I still feel like you really need to go 5-1. We'll say need to go 5-1. They don't have to, but they need to go 5-1 over this 6-game stretch to set themselves up for that Mets series. But either way, unless they just completely fall flat this week, you're going to have that Mets series as an opportunity to pass them in the standings and take care of business. But it would really help if you can take advantage of these 6 games coming up. The Mets have 2 more against the Nationals and then 4 against the Phillies. All of those games are at home for the Mets. The Diamondbacks have 3 at Colorado and 4 at Milwaukee. Feels like, again, you've already lost the first game of this week. You really need to go 5-1 the rest of the way to take advantage of those matchups. It's going to be Grant Holmes versus Brandon Williamson on Tuesday night. I really thought it was going to be Ian Anderson. They decided to go with Grant Holmes. I think that's a bit questionable. I hope they prove me wrong. The Braves have done that often throughout my tenure here at Locked On Braves or covering the Braves. Look, Grant Holmes has not been that good. In the second half of this second half, he has not been that good. And in a game that you really need to win, and who knows if Ian Anderson would be any better or had you waited to throw A.J. Smith-Shawver on this night that they'd be any better. But Grant Holmes, can you get me through the lineup twice and things not get blown up? That's kind of where I'm at and what I'm hoping for with Grant Holmes on Tuesday night. I think you got to have a short leash, and then if you have a lead, you have to go to your best arms and then just hope that Schwellenbach and Sale can pick you up innings-wise in the next 2 games. But again, after what happened in LA or against LA, losing those last 2 games, really want to come in here and get things going against the Reds, a team that's already beaten you 3 times, and you're throwing Grant Holmes on the mound. And again, hopefully he proves me wrong. He's proved a lot of people wrong already this year, but I'm skeptical to say the least. As for Brandon Williamson, had a decent rookie season in 2023, but he's missed most of 2024. In 13 innings since coming back, he's allowed just 7 hits and 3 walks with 11 strikeouts. So he's been good, shorter outings. But his last time out, he faced the Cardinals. He gave up 1 earned on 3 hits and 2 walks over 5 innings with 5 strikeouts on 82 pitches. So I would assume that he is now fully stretched out to go, full workload, 85, 90 pitches, something like that. Cutter, 4-seam, changeup, curveball, almost a 30% fly ball rate in a very hitter-friendly ballpark. He's given up 11 home runs and 55 and a third innings at home last year. So hopefully the Braves can take advantage of that and get the long ball back in that game. But as we know and saw last year playing in this ballpark, it is a very hitter-friendly ballpark, and the Reds still have some good hitters on their side. So it's going to be a tough matchup for the Braves. I think you're going to have to really rely on their offense, and unfortunately, when you're having to rely on this Braves offense to win you some games, that has not worked out well for you this season. But hopefully it does on Tuesday, because they really need to get going and pick up some wins this week. And again, hopefully that starts on Tuesday night against the Cincinnati Reds. Thank you for making Locked On Braves your first listen of the day. Go make Locked On MLB your second listen. Also, make sure you check out the Braves and Reds on SiriusXM on Tuesday night on your SiriusXM app. Search Braves Make sure you follow us on social media at Shortstop Ball, at @LockedOn_Braves. Subscribe on YouTube if you're new. Hit that thumbs up button if you have not already. Thanks to all those who joined me live. We got Jamal Jones, Antonio, Carlos, Doug in here as well. Braves is in here. That's pretty cool. Thank you all for joining today live on the podcast and for the conversations. Jeffrey Humphreys, see you in there as well. Nathaniel Brooks, I really appreciate you joining me here. Nathaniel says, can you move up Schwellenbach and Chris Sale for the first 2 games? No, I think this was regular rest for those guys. You had the off day last week, which allowed you to skip the spot in the rotation, but you do have to use them here on Tuesday to keep everybody on regular rest. So that's why they're doing that. Again, thank you all for joining. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube if you're new. Hit that thumbs up button and make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast wherever you get your podcast. And we will talk to you next time.